we are going over New Mutants 32. And this book was an absolute treat to read. I didn't realize that this was part of a series that we've kind of been going over where the New Mutants need to find out what's happened to their teammate, Karma. The print date on this was October 1985, and this comic just continues to impress. This is called To the Ends of the Earth. Chris Claremont, writer, Steve Leola doing the art, Glynis Oliver doing the colors, L. Lewis Buhaus doing the lettering, Ann Nasanti, editor, and Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief. So we got some big names on this book. And what happens is it says, with the touch of a button, Viper's booby-trapped estate, perched on a cliff top overlooking the Pacific Ocean, blue, sky high. The New Mutants had come to rescue a kidnapped teammate. Viper meant to see the attempt cost their young lives. That's how you open a comic book. And I love the use of the letter bubbles here, where we just kind of get an idea of what's been going on. And then to just completely change it to the stark blue, sky high, just enforces the drasticness and just helps exaggerate what the panel is showing, with our team members here looking on in desperate despair. Now, one thing that I will go through as we continue this review, when I first read this book, I was a little hesitant about the artwork, but I will talk about that when we get to the panel that initially kind of hit me funny and explain what changed my mind. Now, I love this visual storytelling here where we see the explosion with this just kind of like homage to the Kirby Crackle going on there. The different paneling to show the different ways of what's happening during the explosion. And it says, as the earth did beneath her feet and she fell, they all fell toward the rocks and rolling waves below. Sam Gerthy ignited his power, figuring he'd gather everyone up and cannonball them through the avalanche to safety. But the explosions, combined with the nightmare darkness, had so disoriented him that he couldn't tell up from down. Off balance, he missed his grab at Shen and plowed spectacularly into the ocean. And then they talk about how Bobby, Sunspot, just brutally smashing through the rocks trying to save Shan, and all of them not being able to handle the fact that they had failed their teammate. Throughout that awful night and the following day, the four mutants ranged the beach, seeking their lost teammate without success. Now, we've gone over the Marvel magazine that introduced the New Mutants and the hothead that Roberto is. And he had a love. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. Juliana. And because the life he chose, or this is how he blames himself, she died. And now he's anchoring her loss to Shen's. And he just becomes so cold towards his team. But within all of that, they've learned something that has happened to Shen. And they can't believe that it's her teammate. Each member dealing with this grief in their own way. Of course, Bobby being the hothead, Sam and Danny kind of being the team leaders, hefting this loss on their shoulders. And I just love this story. I mean, I wish that we got quality like this throughout each individual issue. And I wish that we'd get some big surprises. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of you know, and this threw me for a loop when I bought this, but this issue is the first appearance of Madripoor. And that's kind of where this story takes place. They're all learning what has happened to Shen, and it brings them to this very despicable city. And I love how when they enter, it says, "Welcome, fellow students, to Earth's version of Mos Eisley Spaceport and a modern-day Tortuga, haven of world-class pirates, crooks, and assorted lesser scoundrels. No extradition and government security make this the perfect hideout, a sort of neutral zone where the deadliest of enemies can hang out in absolute comfort and safety without the fear of each other or foreign cops. Now, they entered without their passports, and I love how they're able to bypass customs and have Warlock fly them out of there immediately. Now, here's where I kind of started to understand the artwork. I kind of feel like things felt a little too surreal and square after looking at artwork such as Bob McLeod's, which was more of a traditional storytelling style, to the just out there insanity of Bill Sienkiewicz that really rocketed the New Mutants comic book up to stardom. So when I saw, what was the penciler's name? Steve Loyola. I love that even though he has more of a semi-traditional style of like Bob McLeod, when it comes to Warlock or the more intense moments, you can kind of see that surrealism coming in that actually serves the story. Now, if you're wondering why I'm being a little vague in the story, yes, this came out in the 80s, but if you've never read The New Mutants, I want you guys to go check it out. But something happens with Shin that essentially makes her a villain. So spoilers to a degree. So if you don't want any type of little inkling of spoilers, make sure to pause this review, go get the book, and come out. Come out. Jeez. You can tell I'm not had enough coffee today. So Danny says that where Shin is hiding out, they're going to make a plan of attack. Little do they know that while they're watching the villain is watching them. And again, this was another one of those panels where you can kind of see a mixture of traditional comic book art and Sienkiewicz coming out, especially when they draw Rain. Now remember, Rain considers everyone here like family because she was essentially the Catholic Church or whatever it was that she grew up in. They were gonna kill her because they considered her a witch because of her mutant ability. So anytime her family is hurt, she takes it personal. But I love that even though the heaviness of the content of this book, there are moments of levity where they're trying to figure out a way to why Warlock is trying to say how we should come in sneakily. He goes, "Friend Doug, which of self-human's forms do you find most pleasing?" And it just kind of makes you laugh that Warlock is able to try out all these different disguises, and then this last one kind of being like a faux Kermit the Frog, and it's enough to make you laugh, and I can appreciate that. Because after that, poop hits the fan. And again, Danny having to take on the realization that her team is not as strong as she initially intended against Shin. And you can see the way that she's been changed. My God. Hello, Danielle. As you Americans say, long time no see. From your expression, I can tell you how glad you are to learn it's really me. You and your friends are to be the instruments of my vengeance. Isn't that nice? And you won't mind a bit slaughtering those you care for most once I've broken you to my will. I hope you resist. I want this to hurt. Now, as everything happens, the only two people that are able to escape are Danny and Darkchild Ileana. And what happens here is kind of like takes a turn from sort of this subterfuge type story to time traveling, as Ileana is at this point, even though she is the ruler of Limbo, she cannot quite tell where she's going when she teleports. So they end up back in ancient Egypt, and we learn a little cool tie to Storm, which then leads them into the future of Madripoor, and we see what Shin has done to the New Mutants, bending them to her will. And we get this whole horrendous look of Bobby, Magma, Sam, and Rain. We missed you girls. How sweet they look. So young and fresh and innocent. And it is such a juxtaposition to how we know Rainy to be at this time in history. So Danny sees the repercussions of what happens if she doesn't save her friends. And once again, left on the cliffhanger. However, we get our favorite character, the Wind Rider, to come in and help them towards the end of the book. I highly recommend this series, guys. The New Mutants, I always feel like, has always been the underdog of the early X-Men stories because at the time it was Uncanny and the New Mutants. That was it. It wasn't until way later that we got X-Factor, and then after they finally closed out New Mutants, we got X-Force and Generation Next, or Generation X. I always get that in the Age of Apocalypse title mixed up. But back then, there were only 2 books with a couple of event books here and there. And it just shines. And this whole thing that happens to Shin and what they have to do to save her was such an excellent arc. I went ahead and ordered the missing one so that we guys can finally finish this story arc. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it is like to get your action figures and comics and grab this series. If you've enjoyed the review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next subscribe, that way as I continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with you all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.